I grew up in Ammanford, very, very close by, and I'm very familiar with the beauty of the landscape that we have around here. I feel we are incredibly privileged and incredibly lucky to live in the place that we do. So making sure that we protect that and for future generations, I think is incredibly important. I oppose pylons being erected in the Towy Valley, and there are numerous reasons why I don't think it is a meaningful way forward for us. And part of that is, of course, looking at the beauty of the landscape around us. But part of it is also the impact that we think it will have on both the economy and communities locally. Some of the reasons why opposing the pylons is important is the impact that they can potentially have both on the agricultural and rural economy here and also on tourism. So those are two aspects that I think are crucially important to any conversation that we're having about pylons in the area. Making sure that we're safeguarding those areas of our economy is crucial because we know how important it is for our valley and the rural economy generally. So on the policy side of things, Welsh Labour has a preference for undergrounding the cables, which gives us a really good starting point, I think, here, to make sure that we have those conversations with key policy decision makers to make sure that those pylons are not erected and that we get the underground cabling that we need. The thing that has struck me most is just how mobilised the community is on this. And for me, as a potential representative, it's been incredibly important for me to have those conversations with local groups, making sure that I'm listening as much as possible and also advocating on their behalf. So we've been very lucky to be able to kind of bring decision makers and policy makers into the conversation. And I think moving forward, it's going to be critical for me as a potential Member of Parliament to be able to continue advocating on behalf of the community to make sure that their views are heard. Community consent is crucial in matters such as this. I think it's really important that we look at matters holistically, and there might well be instances where pylons in particular circumstances in cities and that kind of thing might be appropriate. I think it's very clear here in the beautiful Towy Valley that is not the way forward for us. And as mentioned, we are lucky that we have that planning policy in place already where there is that preference for undergrounding here, which I think is something that would be far better suited to the area that we're talking about. I think we're very lucky in the Senedd that Jeremy Miles has brought together this group that will be reviewing the future of the grid and what that means for places like the Towy Valley. So I think those conversations are certainly starting to take place already. What we need to make sure is that we have strong Labour voices locally who can feed into that conversation to highlight the views and needs of people locally. Community consent, incredibly important. So making sure that those voices are heard, I think, is going to be crucial. Well, I think the Senedd has a history of standing up for matters that really mean something to local people, and whether that is, there's legislation from 2015 which is essentially about being a good ancestor, right? The Future Generations Act. And part of what that means is making sure that we're there encouraging green energy wherever possible, but being a good ancestor means listening to people as well, making sure that that the community is consenting to decisions that are being made. So for me, the Senedd is in a position where we already have this underlying preference for undergrounding of cabling. We know that Julie James and Jeremy Miles are bringing together a group of people to look at issues in further detail. So the groundwork is already there, I think, for a productive way forward on this. Green energy is going to be critical for us in the next 20 years, and making sure that we strengthen the grid wherever possible will be incredibly important. There are means and ways of doing that by bringing people along on the journey with us, and underground cabling for me is certainly the most appropriate way forward. Well, up until now, just as a candidate, I have been able to bring people together to have those difficult conversations and make sure that I am advocating on behalf of the community that I seek to represent. In Parliament, if I'm successful, I think we will be in a stronger position to further that argument because we'll have a Labour government in Westminster, fingers crossed, and also in the Senedd. So having a voice then that can pull those opinions together, bring those two sides together, I think is going to be really important for us as a community moving forward. So that strength of advocating will just increase. I'm lucky that I've been able to speak to shadow cabinet members on this issue already. But being a voice, I think, in Parliament who can work with the next Labour government to achieve the changes that we need here, I think is incredibly important. So those are the things that I would be focusing on then as a potential Member of Parliament. I think there are a couple of things that politicians need to be doing. The first of which is to make sure that they're out there listening and absorbing as much information as possible and educating themselves on this matter. The second thing, I think, is to be able to advocate as clearly as possible, whether that is in Parliament, in the Senedd or elsewhere. Making sure that we're standing up for communities will be crucial. And also working together on these solutions. That, for me, is something that will inevitably lead to stronger results for us locally. The worry that I have, particularly with the pylons, I understand, of course, we live in an incredibly beautiful place, and from a landscape perspective and the impact on tourism, that is a great worry. The other worry for me is the economic impact. Potentially, or especially when you think about the roads that need to be constructed in order for the pylons to then be erected, how that might impact on herds being kept in particular fields, the impact on the agricultural economy, I think is something that hasn't been considered as sufficiently as it should be yet. So the agricultural aspect of things is a primary concern of mine. So what would we lose by having those pylons? Both the beauty of the landscape, I think that is certainly one of the things that we would lose, but my more overwhelming worry, I think, is the impact that it could have on the local economy. So if after the general election I would be representing this area in Parliament, I think it would be incumbent upon me to raise questions about this as soon as I am able to in Parliament, making sure that we are out there asking the big questions and making the views of local people heard will be crucial. And also continuing to work with the community on these issues, making sure that I am there listening and advocating as well on these matters will be vital.